Good morning, fellow declutterers. Welcome to Decluttering 55 Plus with Michelle Passoff. When Tom Butler made a decision to turn around his somewhat stagnant life and eat better to address issues with diabetes, he didn't do it alone. He built a whole movement around it. He created an organization called Cycling Over 60. He launched a podcast by the same name, and he started a whole advocacy campaign for boomers everywhere to come along for the ride to healthy lifestyle practices, adventure, and community. We talk about bicycling on Decluttering 55 Plus with Michelle Passoff podcast because good health management, eating and exercise top the list of practices at the very foundation of aging powerfully. If you can't get off the easy chair, the options are more limited when it comes to being ready for anything as the years go by. Now is as good a time as any to review, reset, and revitalize your exercise regimen. For those new to Decluttering 55 Plus with Michelle Passoff, you may not know that this is the place where we talk about next level decluttering, areas of life that may be confronting or confounding as you age. Our conversations are meant to straighten things out and gain clarity as you create your next steps. In addition to good health, eating, and fitness, we talk with experts, authorities, geeks, and authors, and everyday people about dealing with decluttering tech, writing a memoir, social relationships, making decisions about where you're going to live and what you're going to do next in life, finance and legal matters, and why not, while we're at it, final arrangements. Today, we're focusing on fitness and cycling specifically. If you're already a biker, stay tuned for our conversation with Tom. You'll enjoy it and find a friend in him. It hasn't always crossed your mind to straddle a bicycle since you were in the fifth grade. Maybe this conversation will renew an interest or inspire you in other ways. One never knows. Tom has a master's of public health and a master's in marriage and family therapy. His current professional endeavors include a film that he's producing called Bike RX. The bike is a medical device. And I think that's a great way to start our conversation. Tom is from Tacoma, Washington. Please welcome him. Welcome, Tom.
Well, thank you for having me. This is fun.
Thank you so much for shining a light on the importance of exercise and the joy and benefits of biking, not only as a fitness choice, but you say it's a medical device. Can you tell me more about what you mean by that?
Yeah, it's heavily rooted in the concept that exercise is medicine. And I'd encourage people to go to a website called exercisesmedicine.org. It's a joint program between the American Medical Association and the American College of Sports Medicine. And if you buy into that concept that exercise should be seen as a medicine, then I argue the bicycle is the perfect device for delivering that medicine.
Why do you think that?
There's basically three different reasons. One is, and in my opinion, the most important thing, it's fun. And getting in shape needs to be fun, really.
That helps give you the incentive to do it at least.
That's right.
You don't have dread.
That's right. And it's not always fun, but there's a lot of aspects of cycling that are fun. And so another reason is that it's low impact. And as people age, that becomes an important thing. And if you haven't been active, if you're 55 plus and you haven't been active, then having something that's friendly to your joints can be a very important thing. And also for a longevity piece, it's an important thing. And then I guess finally the thing would be that it's easy to ramp up cycling. So if you're totally out of shape, you can get on an e-bike, you can go 5 miles. It's a fun experience, and you get pedal assist. And as you get more in shape, then it can be more stressful.
Do you think that when people retire and they have more time on their hands, that they're more inclined to ramp up? Is it common to begin to ramp up your exercise, or how do people bring themselves to for a renewed interest in something, since you did that yourself?
I think that's absolutely a factor, and it's one of the reasons why we focus on 55 and older. I mean, what we say is anybody that wants to be cycling after they're 60 is welcome at cycling over 60. We're not carding people and kicking people out. But I think that when you there is this transition point, which is something that I know that you know, that you start thinking about life, maybe how am I going to downsize my home? What's retirement going to look like? There's a lot of decisions in this time of life. And so that it's a point where people can make a decision to be more active. And then, like you said, there's a lot of times the kids are out of the house. There's not running, kids to basketball practice or whatever it is. And then
You
retirement,
literally have more time.
you literally have more time. And so those are important factors for sure.
Well, one of the things we said and you said that's I keep thinking about since our conversation before this interview is that you're either exercising or you're deteriorating. And can you say something about that? Because I think that's been on my brain since we talked.
Yeah, it's absolutely a fact. Our bodies are meant to be active. And unfortunately, from a you know millions of years, thousands of years, or whatever, our bodies, if you're not using them, then the body starts shutting things down because there's this thing about saving energy with the body. And so if you're not moving, then the body thinks, okay, we're not moving. Let's start shutting systems down so they're not utilizing energy. And so, absolutely, if you are not being active, if you're not stressing your body, then it is going to shut down. It's going to decline. You're going to take systems offline. And that can mean losing muscle, which is very important to have later in life.
What are the if you start first of all, how do you if you want to start cycling, where do you begin?
The first thing to begin is to think about where you might cycle. What are you comfortable about immediately? That can expand definitely, but what's your immediate comfort level? And then, what is a bike that you can get that is going to facilitate that kind of riding that you like to do. Now, you need to, talk to your doctor and talk about, what is there anything I need to be worried about? Is there anything I need to focus on? There very, very few people have to be inactive. So for the most part, your doctor is going to give you some directions about how to be active safely, but they're not going to say you can't be active. Uh, and so
I've
once you
never heard a
have,
doctor say that, and
yeah,
luckily.
yeah, absolutely. Even we know a lot more about healing now, that even if you have an injury, that movement is important. So you have your idea about how you're going to bike. You need to find a bike. If you have a bike, you kind of need to think about, does this bike need to be replaced? And you can find local bike shops that are super helpful at helping you figure all of that out. And then, you just get going. And that might be getting going out your driveway for a small ride. It might be finding a local bike trail and figuring out how to get your bike to that trail. And it might be finding a bike club or some people that are riding together, that are riding at your pace, that you can join in with. That social element can be really beneficial as a way to start, because other people who are more experienced can give you some advice.
Do you think it's better to ride alone or with others?
You know, for me, absolutely with others, but also I like getting out and being on a long trail by myself and kind of getting in a mode. And just it's meditative to me. It's probably both.
That's interesting.
There's probably times that it's nice to just be out in the quiet, letting your mind just clear, um, listening to nature, being alongside a river, those kind of things. But also, there's a very social thing. Now, I'm biased. I admit 100%. I think all cyclists are awesome, but I do think there's like a selection. People that are out biking and enjoying. They're a good group of people, and so I think you might have to look for it a little bit, but you will find a group of people that you like cycling with.
What are the dangers of bicycling?
The number one danger is interaction with cars, and this is one of the reasons why at Cycling Over 60, I'm really focused on advocating for safe bike infrastructure, and it becomes vital. It becomes a vital thing to even get people to consider getting out. So
I know as
that's
a driver, I'm afraid of bicyclists.
well, and as drivers, I'm telling all you drivers out there that aren't cyclists, advocate for safe biking infrastructure, because it separates you from bikes, and we need it. We need active transportation. We don't have the time to get really in depth for active transportation, but the interaction with cars is the most, the highest level of risk. And then I would say bike handling skills. And it's worth, if you haven't been on a bike in a while, to go out to connect with an organization that can help you learn bike handling skills, or get on YouTube and look specifically for bike handling skills. There's not enough uh, resources out there, and I'm trying to make a difference in that.
What's a
There's not enough.
bike handling, what did you say? Bike handling?
Yeah, bike handling class instruction.
Yeah, well, what is bike
Yeah.
handling?
Well, when you haven't been on a bike for a while, you're going to be able to ride it. But there's all kinds of things about how to make tight corners, learning how to stop the bike and and not stopping too late. And kind of depending on what kind of bike you're riding, there can be those issues. But it's mostly like getting a feel and getting it to be a natural thing about how you're moving on the bicycle and how you're moving around obstacles, how you're moving next to other people, how far away you want to be other people. What happens if you go off the trail into some gravel? What happens if you go off the
Uh,
trail in some grass? Just really becoming familiar with how your weight and the bike interact, and how you can use your weight, use your steering to move your bike in the safest manner.
Seems to me essential. Everybody should take that class.
Well, I think that's right, but I also think that a lot of people get on a bike and they remember, when they were 6 years old, that they knew how to ride their bike. And also it feels kind of weird, can somebody teach me how to ride a bike at 55 years old? But I'm still learning. I've been now riding a lot for 3 years, and I rode a lot when I was in my 20s and early 30s. I'm pretty familiar with the bicycle, but I'm still learning how to handle it. In fact, I'm doing something called cyclocross.
Absolutely. I often say to myself, I often remember, maybe the only teacher that I remember from grammar school or high school is my driver's ed teacher. And I can remember that. And as I'm parking, I can even hear his voice to this day. But I don't think I ever was taught bicycling.
And it's true. It's one of those things. How I was taught bicycling is my dad put me on too big of a bike, and I crashed and got up and crashed and got up and crashed and got up until I could ride it. That was my bicycle education. There's some really good programs going on that is bringing bike education into schools now. So kids are learning how to bike a little differently in a lot of cases.
Well,
But
I guess it's going to become more and more a mode of transportation more than just a recreation. Um,
well, I think active transportation is really important, and there are advances with bicycling, particularly the e-bike, that make that a really viable option for a lot of people.
what is the most exciting bicycling trip that you've been on? Do you have a bucket list of places that you want to bike? Because it can be an adventure. Also, you can actually go on biking vacations.
I have, because of the podcast, more places to go than I could ever do. And, there's just so many cool things to do on a bike. Now, for me, and in fact, I'm wearing this sweatshirt called Bike the Methow, which is Winthrop, Washington area. And I rode from Anacortes, Washington to Winthrop, Washington. And I went over the North Cascades here in Washington,
How
which,
long is that?
well, it was about 70 miles a day.
What?
Yeah, with a pretty significant elevation gain over what's called Washington Pass. And the problem was I had planned on biking across the state of Washington, but the my knees, I got bursitis in my knees, and I it got really painful, and I could only make it a couple days. But I did go over the North Cascades here, which is like, to me, riding through the Alps, and it was absolutely beautiful. And then I was able to coast for about 30 miles down into Winthrop. So it's hard to match that experience.
Let me ask you this. You do a podcast. What can you tell us about that? And if people want to think about or get in action to start bicycling, can you would it help them if they tuned into your podcast?
The podcast started with my journey to get back on a bike and at 60 ride what's called Seattle to Portland, which is a 206 2-day ride, and
Wow.
I thought that was all it was gonna be, but then I ended up learning some really interesting things about what was going on with my body, and the bicycle now is a medical instrument for me. It is a medical device for me. It helps me manage my diabetes. And so I would say that's really what the focus of the podcast has become, how to cycle later on in life, and especially how to be active with a bicycle in a fun way, in a safe way. I do a brief update of my journey at the beginning of the podcast, and then I'll have a guest on. And that guest can be talking about maybe something about diet, maybe something about how to stay committed to exercise goals, maybe geeking out about bicycle tech, and then also having people come on who are late in life doing bicycle tours like you mentioned, or other things that are really inspiring.
And where can people find you, Tom? It's
It's like,
Tom Butler, so that's the first thing.
yeah,
Butler.
that's right. And then
It's
cyclingover60.com is a website that
and
talks about.
60 is spelled out. It's not
That's right.
60. It's cycling after 60,
Over 60.
over 60.
Yeah,
Cycling over 60, 60 spelled out.com. And they are
correct.
your podcasts. Um, they'll find out where to go and what to do there.
Yeah, the podcast you can pull up basically on any platform, or you can access it through the website. And then the website talks about what we're doing locally, which is building a local network of organizations that we hope will be a model that we can export other places.
Well, that's important. Can you give us the name of that? And if somebody hears this from another city and they want to know more about what you're doing and bring it to their city, that's what, when you say model, that's what you're meaning to do, where you're collaborating with other organizations within your town to builds the popularity of biking. Is that it?
Yeah, it's called CAN, Cycling for Active Aging Network, and it's a network of organizations
And
that.
that's CANN or CAN. How do you spell it?
CAAN. Yeah,
CAAN.
yeah.
Cycling. What's it stand for?
Cycling for Active Aging Network. And what it
Okay.
means is a network of organizations that are focused on removing all the barriers that someone would have to get going on a bike later on in life, especially if they're inactive.
And it's all starting over there in Tacoma, Washington. So go to Tom's website, cycling over 60, 60 spelled out, not the numbers, and connect to the podcast, connect to the movement to bring and make biking not only popular, but to make it a medical health instrument, really.
Yes.
Tom, thank you so much for shining a light on the importance of exercise and the joy and benefits of making biking a fitness choice. If you're listening today, I hope this conversation made a difference and that you'll take a minute and go to our website at www.decluttering55plus.com, hit the Let's Connect button, and send us a message about what opened up for you in this conversation and tell us what you're doing to stay fit. Signing up on the website will enable you to receive notifications about upcoming episodes and other news from Decluttering 55 Plus. Just fill out the form and send your comments. While you're at the website, take a look at the spiral illustrated book called Decluttering 55 Plus Wisdoms to Create a Legacy, Not a Mess, and buy a copy for yourself, your friends, your family. Give it as a gift for every holiday and every occasion. You can sit it on the top of a desk or dresser, flip it to any page for a prompt on how to take action on important areas of your life. After a day, a week, or month, flip it again and let it prompt you to the next action to take. It's fun and meaningful, so be sure to keep a copy close. And please follow, like, subscribe, love if you want, to us on social media platforms, including YouTube, Facebook, and Instagram. Let's build this community. This does it for us today. I want to thank you again, Tom, for joining us. Everybody get out there and get fit, get exercise, live longer, and be happy. My best wishes, and have a happy and clutter-free day.
Projector is the video streaming app for your life. Projector is unlimited cloud storage for all your videos and photos. Stream on your TV and protect your most cherished memories. Start today at projectorstream.com. Projector. Stream what matters.
Start streaming your home videos the same way you stream TV. Projector is your family's own video streaming app on your TV. Visit projectorstream.com today on your computer and start uploading.